All right, good evening, folks. Thank you for joining us here regarding this informational meeting on the proposed rehabilitation for the Homemakers Entry Monument. I like that. It's a good intro. My name is Everett Garcia. I'm the Commissioner of Public Works. With us tonight, we have Brendan Ryan, who's our Assistant Engineer. In the back, you might recognize a fellow by the name of Bill Maley, who's our Town Supervisor. A little bit of housekeeping items. If you have questions, we will have a Q&A session in the end, so all I ask is please hold your questions till the end. We'll go through all the questions. If you're joining us via Zoom, please type your questions in the chat box, and Brendan will be reading them off at the end here. Good evening, how are you? The agenda for this evening, essentially, we did introductions. We'll go through a little bit of background on the project, the existing conditions of the walls and why we're here. We'll discuss the proposed district improvements, and we'll gauge public interest for the proposed improvements, and then chat about the next steps that we might want to pursue. So a little bit of background here. This neighborhood improvement district was established in 2002 for the purpose of rehabilitating and repairing these entry monuments. These entry monuments were built with the neighborhood in the early 1900s. So they're from the original neighborhood construction. In 2002, this district was established in order to perform repair and rehabilitation on these walls and monuments. A restoration project occurred in 2005 based on recommendations from a 2002 Bureau Architecture report. And so the current condition of the monuments are they're in fair to poor conditions due to deferred maintenance. Some of the capstones are damaged, the mortar is crumbling, stones are cracked, and there's graffiti present on the walls. Each monument is a little bit different depending on what location you're looking at. And so late in 2022, our previous Commissioner of Public Works, Mike Guyon, re-engaged with Bureau Architecture to update their 2002 report on the condition of the entry monuments. There's 8 monuments in total for 4 gateways. And so as part of that, we sort of determined what the project scope, the current project scope is, and what it would take to develop a comprehensive list of repairs. And that's why we're here tonight. So Bureau Architecture performed an update to their 2002 study, 2002 report, which is, some of you folks have picked up a copy that I printed in the back. And I can certainly provide digital versions of that as well via email if you're interested in. And what Bureau has come back and said is that they recommend a bunch of different things depending on each entry monument. So some of the items included are replacement of the broken piers and rail caps, removal of the graffiti and painted stones, removal of overgrown vegetations and vines at the walls and railings, and then annual maintenance program going forward. And so it's important to note that the recommendations by Bureau are intended to prevent further deterioration on these entrance monuments. This is just an example of the scope of work or the schedule that Bureau has determined. So essentially, it's hard to see, but they've outlined, they've visited the site, and they've called out repairs that you see in the report for each gateway and entrance monument specifically.
Do us a favor, Everett.
Yeah.
Go over this and explain what is the pier, what is the railway, what is the cap?
Oh yeah, sure. So let me see if I got the. Yeah, so the caps are these, the caps on top of the piers. They have these standalone piers, and then they have the end piers as part of the railing, which is the connecting portion here, and then the walls underneath the railing, and another pier and cap there. So that's most of it there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Claudia Nealon. I live on Southern Parkway.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's good if we introduce ourselves so that we know each other's names.
Sure.
I know you want to move forward, but I would just like to have a brief summary of what was our money spent on 10 years ago to get these things open.
Oh, usually I can, usually, oh.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't mind spending the money on it.
Sure.
Well, I better stop before I get myself in trouble, but, so I've been here for 36 years.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, we got them kind of repaired. 2 years later, that didn't work. And then we had a bond. I thought it was a bond floated. Every unit, every house had to pay X amount of dollars for the bond. And that's fine. But what was done then that causes masonry to be a problem now? I've got a brick house. I mean, the masonery's fine. Why didn't what we did 10 years ago stay? Now, I know you weren't around,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
But I'd also like to know the amount of money collected, okay, for that bond. Because I certainly don't want to spend more money on a mason, and this is looks all well and good. So, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I think it's helpful if we would know what exactly was done prior and why are they breaking down now? Because personally, somebody did a bad job twice, and who's to say they're not going to do it for a third time? So,
Yeah, well, to quickly answer your question, we will have a Q&A session at the end, but I believe back in 2005, the scope of work was about $150,000 or so. And it was very similar in nature, just repointing of mortar joints and caps and all of that. Over time, you know, mortar breaks down, and without any maintenance or deferred maintenance, the product needs to, you know, the longer you wait, the more you have to do. And so as part of Bureau's current proposal, they're saying, you know, every 5 years, repoint the grouting, every year, do inspections, et cetera. So that's sort of what plays into it a little bit. And my understanding is in 2005, it was about $140,000, $150,000, that original project there.
so I really have to be clear on this because I don't know. I mean, I really want to know if it was $50 a household, okay? That's a lot of money over a 10-year period. If it was 100, so you're saying the whole total cost collected was 150,000?
That's my understanding, yeah, from looking into the historical documents.
Okay.
So bringing this back, oh, sorry.
We can talk more about it afterwards, but I can give you a document that I have here.
Okay.
That might help you answer.
Okay.
There were some years that it was $50. There were some years that it was no money. There were some years it was $16 over the past, whatever it is, 18 years or so. Okay.
Okay, all right, great. So bringing it to today's proposed project, the total capital cost of the rehabilitation is about $198,500. Now that is inclusive of some engineering and administration costs because detailed engineering drawings will have to be developed and the town would have to follow its procurement process by developing bid specifications, et cetera. And like I said, Bureau is also proposing annual maintenance of $1,200, which generally includes inspections, pictures, cutting back of vegetation or vines that are growing. Sorry, I gotta stop doing that. Cutting back of vines that are growing up on the walls. And then every 5 years, they're recommending repointment of the mortar joints, inspection and patching of the caps on the piers, and repainting and touching up of the metal work for the lights on top of the piers. Essentially, there's two options available for funding this project. One would be a 5-year payback where the district would borrow money from another district in the town and repay it back over a 5-year period. The second option would be where the town would issue bonds and there would be a 10-year payback period associated with it. So to give you a little bit of more detail into it, the 5-year payback would essentially cost the district about $45,000 a year. Now when you divide that by the parcels, you're talking about $195 per parcel a year for 5 years. If you look at the 10-year payback option, the district charge would be about $26,000 a year, and per parcel that equates to about $117. There's about 250 parcels in the neighborhood there. This slide here, I threw this slide in here because I know representatives of the neighborhood have talked about including annual landscaping work in the district charges. I will note that when the district was formed, It was specifically for the repair and rehabilitation of the walls. It does not include landscaping work. In order to include landscaping work, the district would have to be amended in order to provide this service. And in speaking with the town attorney, that process basically looks almost like a district formation process again. We have to collect petitions, et cetera, and go through that process. That could add about $20 a year per parcel.
I'm sorry, but I mean, can I have, but if you want to do weeding and other kind of gardening, you need an additional easement. Because the easement now, proposed now, is only for the wall, literally only for the wall.
That's correct, yeah, yeah. That's a good point. So the next steps, really why we're here is we want to gauge the interest from the community and sort of see where you're at in your interest for either repayment option. So I was hoping to maybe just get a show of hands of how many folks would prefer to go the 5-year payback option.
Can you bring it back?
Oh, sure.
And does that include the annual charges you were talking about?
Yes, the annual maintenance program by Bureau, yes. And then this is the 10-year payback, which is about $117 per parcel. So how many folks maybe would be interested in that option?
And the total for both ends up equaling what?
Well, for the 5-year, it's $198,425 estimated. The 10-year is a little bit more because we have to include bond fees. So that's more like $204,925 is what we're calculating. Yes.
Sorry for yet another interjection.
No worries.
But first, I bear some good tidings. We didn't know about this, and we did do the removing vegetation section on our property, thus, cutting a couple thousand off this. But is there an option that we could also vote on where the gardening service maintenance is not included, but just the repairs? Or is that something you're advising against?
Yeah, yeah.
So currently, this doesn't include anything as far as vegetation. You're welcome. And the only reason we're bringing it up is this was something that had come up from several neighbors, and we had discussed at the Homemakers Association meeting, the board of us as well. Because what has happened, and we talked about this a little bit before the meeting started, I think it was in the 50s or 60s that there was a gardening club that was started. Inga knows well about this. There were people in the neighborhood that would volunteer and would, take care of all the gardens. And unfortunately, there aren't people who are doing that anymore. Or if people do volunteer, it's for 1 or 2 months, and then they're tired of it. And so what happens is the gardens don't look great. And obviously, they're part of the welcome to our neighborhoods. And in addition, to be quite honest, our association, like Everett said, is made up of 250 homes, but probably about 150 people pay association fees. And obviously, it's completely people's choice if they want to be part of the social stuff and get a directory. That's everybody's choice. But the gardens are part of the walls, and everybody is benefiting from that beautiful welcome. And so the past, I don't know how long, it's been at least 5 years, but we're outside company, Inga knows better, right? Where outside companies have been hired. And so for instance, Liz and I became one of the presidents last year, and the gardens really looked awful. And so we were using a contractor who happened to be Clover, who I know is great and a lot of people love, but they weren't taking great care of the beds. So we ended up firing them and hiring somebody else. And so every year we have to go through looking for new people to take care of it, and then negotiating contracts. And it's just really tedious. And quite honestly, we don't know who will be the next president of Homemakers. So it's just constant work. So if we could have it instead built in, and just so you guys know, so just to be totally candid, and Everett can talk about the discrepancy when it's the town, but we are paying about $2,500 max a year for the landscaping of those 8 beds. Stop me if I say something wrong. It's about $2,500. There are years where Inga has taken money out of her own pocket and replaced lots of plants. What? 6 what? Oh, sorry, 6 beds. Sorry, not yours, not the 2 on that side, sorry. And yes.
We have a certain color scheme in mind.
So, so anyway, so sorry, just to finish what I was saying, there's just, so 6 beds right now. It's been about $2,500, and that is mulching, weeding throughout the year, and doing a fall cleanup. And right now it's working well, but who knows? So the proposition that Liz and I and the other board members talked about was just working that into our neighborhood association, which is, as most of you know, a line on our tax bill. And so $2,000 or $2,500 divided by 250 homes a year is not something that most of us would really feel. It will be more when it's the town. I'll put an Everett's thing, because the town has something that he can explain that has to pay a certain amount per hour to, right?
Well, we'd have to pay prevailing
Liability.
wages, et
Exactly.
cetera.
That's
yeah.
where it comes from. But still, we're talking about, I mean, even if we double that figure, that's what we're talking about annually, just to make sure those gardens are kept up, and from year to year. We don't have to every year, start back at zero and think, what are we going to do this year? So that was just my spiel about the garden, sorry.
Okay, so let's say we decide on one of these options. I don't see any guarantee here, and I know it's hard to guarantee things, but when you're spending $200,000, I think it would be nice to have a guarantee, because I don't know who Borough is. I'm sure they're fine. I'm sure you did your homework on them. But damn it, this is the 3rd time, and I don't want to keep paying for this, I mean, I know I'm going to go to hell when I say this, I know. But isn't there, why don't we just tear one down and fix it so it lasts till eternity? Then the next year we tear one down and fix it. Because it's just like the paving on the streets. They do Eastland and Westland, and then 5 years later they do Southern Parkway. I've called the town and said, why can't we all do it at once? Okay. The other thing is, the entryways on Monroe and Highland, aren't they in the city?
One of them, half of them are. So the town line kind of cuts down Southern Parkway.
Right.
One of them is in the town and one of them is in the city.
And you know what the next question is?
Well, historically, all of the entry monuments have been included in the district, so work has been done on all of the monuments.
But why can't why isn't the city giving us a little money?
Yeah.
We are technically the property that's on the border, and we pay our taxes 100%.
Right. Sure.
So I'd like to follow up a little bit something that Claudia said, because the thing about why is this keep happening, right? And the thing that I see on page 8 and the thing that I see on page 10 is, quote, inappropriate mortar application. And is this the kind of company we're going to ask to do it again? So that's, that's an issue that Claudia raised, and that I think is a valid concern.
Yeah, I think we would work with Bureau to ensure that whoever is selected is, a contractor that's worthy of working on these walls. These are very historic in nature. They're very specialized. There's going to be probably not many firms that can work on these. Bureau Architecture is widely renowned as a firm that works on historical properties. And so I have the utmost confidence that, the documents they'll put together in order to secure the bidding process will be a good set of documents.
Just do me the favor and ask them how they can identify their own work as inappropriate.
It wasn't their work.
Well, they didn't do the work.
Oh, sorry, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's not, okay, yeah, okay.
yeah.
So they were hired to take a look at the work, take a look at what the scope of the project would be. So they're the architects. Then it would need to be put out to bid to masons. So they would be the ones who had to use that appropriate materials.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Historically, we've taken care of it, okay? Well, that doesn't mean we can stop the history and get the city to cough in some money. I'm sorry. These are city portions, and they should a couple of $1,000s.
Yeah, that's certainly something I can pursue. Like I said, it is one wall out of 8. So some of them are in the town of Brighton. But certainly, I think you bring up a valid point. It's something we can pursue.
And that includes the ones on Highland, those walls are completely within the boundaries of Brighton?
So Southern and Monroe, there's one in Brighton, one in the city. And then Edgemere and Highland, they're both in the town.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, because I know for a fact that the one on 1301 Highland on Edgemere, the house on 1301 Highland on Edgemere was changed from Rochester to Brighton to get the Jones, who lived there at the time, into the school district. And I'm not sure if it's the entire property or not. I mean, I've seen some of the plans, and I am not entirely sure. I know that they refused also to give an easement over their property, and had some specific reasons for that, which may have to do with the city or not. I do not know the details of that.
Yeah, I think the parcel is partially in the city. There's a portion that's in the city. I believe we have secured an easement for that property at this point. Yeah.
We had a plumbing issue, and we discovered that part of our plumbing line was in Brighton and part of it was in the city.
Yeah.
But I do, when we did that, when we discovered that, we did check the taxes, and we were surprised to see that they had allocated all the taxes to Brighton. And it seems like most of all of our services.
Well, and it's, well, I mean, sorry, I don't want to go off too far on a tangent, but I mean, as you say about the repaving of the road, they do it up to half of Edgemere also, to where there's a sign, and then they do the last part is done by the city. It helped me get out of a $25 parking ticket once, but the guys told me that no, this is all Brighton. Repaving the road.
So I'd like to just close out our presentation, and then, no worries, Mr. Goldman. And then obviously we'll take any questions you might have. So the next step is, if the neighborhood chooses to go with one option or the other, then really I didn't get a sense of if there was a preference from for either option. I don't know, the 5-year, hands up, or? Okay. Yeah.
I'd like to comment to sort of a follow-up on what Claudia was discussing.
Yep.
I've lived in the neighborhood 55 years. I've observed a lot of things. One thing I observed was the work that was done in 2005. I needed to make some repairs to the mortar in my house, so I asked the people working on this what the magic formula was. I used the same ingredients, and mine have gotten bad over a certain period of years. My concern is this: the last time it was very costly because the only firms considered had the word historical. Is it possible some of us, including me, and I know others who live in the neighborhood, have had very good masonry work done on our front stairs, and those people who do the masonry charge a heck of a lot less? Isn't it possible that you could select the lowest responsible bidder by broadening the categories that you are using?
Yeah, we'll develop bid specifications, and we would be required to take the lowest responsible bidder.
So it could be considerably less than $100,000 and $200,000.
It could be. This is the estimate that Bureau put together, and I think they did a fairly good job through it pretty extensively, taking into consideration today's construction costs and different factors. So I think they're probably fairly accurate here.
Before we leave, are you going to ask us which of the two payment options we prefer?
Yeah, I was in the process of that. I guess by show of hands, is there a preference for the 5-year, or hands up? Or is there a preference for the 10-year?
So does that 10-year include an inflationary amount?
It does. We've included factors for increasing costs throughout the years, yes.
What's the total that's financed? What's the total? Like, if I buy a house, I pay 3 times as much over 30 years as what the house costs. I mean, or it's not a stupid number. What's the actual monetary outlay in the 5 or 10-year situation, because I'd like a sense of what the inflation adjustment or financing costs are.
Yeah, we've increased the cost of that capital cost. I think in the report you'll see like 170,000 is what Bureau had estimated. So we increased a little bit to account for some of the like 6% inflation on certain things. We've increased it to include engineering, administration, legal. So for the 5-year, it is 198,000 is your total cost. And
Sorry, a bond has interest, what's the interest rate?
4.5%. And this is just based on our communication with our finance department.
Sir, what's a bureau? You're talking about the bureau. I'm Gary. Hi.
Oh, hi.
What's the bureau? What do you mean? But what's the word bureau mean?
Bureau Architecture is the firm, yeah. Mhm.
Before we get into the financing, I have a question about the scope of the repair. How does this address the proper working of the lights that are on these stone?
It does, and we recently did complete a work on the finials and the metal work on the lights. Those have been repainted, and I think there was some electrical work done as part of that as well.
Several people mentioned it doesn't address making provision for the lights being serviceable. Not the light bulbs, the servicing of the light poles themselves so that they can work.
The actual lights, as part of the recommended maintenance, every 5 years, there is a component to inspect the lights, repaint the metal work as needed. So there's that aspect of it. And in terms of electrical work, I think they should all be working at this point. If they're not, let me know. Because we did have some work redone on them recently.
So part of the 6,200 every 5 years is to evaluate whether the electrical connections are still proper.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so could you explain, when you said we would borrow from another district,
Yep.
kind of reminded me of Social Security. Do you know what I mean? Giving away our money when it's really not there. So what district would we, and please don't say the sidewalk district.
No, in this instance, it would likely be the water district. It's a district that was established in the town before Monroe County Water Authority took over the infrastructure work, and so there's some money in there. We would still have to charge back 4.5% interest
Sure.
as a repayment to that district. So that's the district we would be borrowing from.
Sorry, quick question. So just to confirm, the two payment options, one is paying, can you pull up those screens again? $195 for 5 years, so that's a total of $975, right? And then one is paying $117 for 10 years, so $1,170.
Yes.
Okay, $975, okay, thank you.
Yes, okay. So, I guess to clarify then, if the town were to then pursue an option, either one of these options, the next steps would be to secure detail engineering, bid document specifications, and then we would have to go through our formal procurement process to secure that contractor. And tentatively, we're thinking the work could begin summer of 2024, assuming there's movement in the project soon. So that's all I have. So yes, yes.
Hold, 1 second. Hold on 1 second for your.
Microphone. Yeah.
Okay. In the past, I know part of the cost was offset by a grant, which I don't know if anybody has pursued that, and that is why these pillars were designated as historical, to qualify them for funding. So has that been done?
I don't know that they've actually been deemed historical, but no, we have not looked for grant funding at this time.
Okay. Is that possible to do that?
Potentially, but from a historical perspective, I'm not sure if they would qualify, but we would have to look into that.
Okay,
yes.
I know that it was done in the past.
Yep, okay.
So, it may be something that warrants an investigation.
Sure, yep, absolutely.
Thank you. Paul Ippolito, 155 Eastland Avenue. Two questions. I'm not sure I'm clear on the easement situation because I did work with the board back on the 2005, and easements was a big issue, if I remember. Am I correct on that, remember? Yeah, easements were a big deal. It was like all of a sudden we couldn't do what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so are we 100% clear? Where do we stand on that? In question number two, it sounds like, I don't think you were here, but Barrow, whatever it is, they picked the contractor, the people that performed the work on the last one.
We would have gone through our standard procurement process. Bureau would have vetted them, reviewed their documents, but they wouldn't have picked the
Okay, so the final say is with your department, who is going to do the work?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Town board, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
town board.
thank
Yep.
you very much, I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
So where do we stand with easements?
Oh, we have the majority of them. I think we're missing one, so that's.
That's us.
Yeah.
That's us. And I don't know if this is appropriate at this juncture, but perhaps, hearing everybody's concerns, perhaps it would be appropriate to say that the neighborhood organization could submit recommendations for contractors or have some sort of final approval, since people have strong opinions about what happened last time.
We would have to follow our legal procurement process and, award the contract to the low bidder based on the specifications.
I'm still not clear on easements. If you don't have 100% in ability to work on the entire, both sides of the wall or whatever,
Correct.
then what is the point of doing half are you going to do half a job, or I'm not clear on this.
Right, we would do 7/8, but I think the goal would be to secure all of the easements if possible.
Well, if you didn't get them before, what's changed? We have new owners, okay.
Yeah,
Understand. I just want to, obviously there's a mix of people here, new people, older people, veterans, and we're just trying to figure it out. Thank you.
I would assume that whoever does the work is going to use mortar that, like the last job, won't be around for after about 15 years have gone by. 15 years from now was a lot later than my life expectancy, but I am concerned about the neighborhood. Isn't it likely that 15 years from now we're going to be going through the same thing because the mortar is going to have deteriorated?
yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons why Bureau Architecture has proposed that annual maintenance and 5-year maintenance program. So that 5-year maintenance portion addresses the repointing of the mortar because you have to continue to address the mortar situation. Yeah, if you leave it alone for 15, 20 years, we would likely be here again.
So the maintenance work in the short term is supposed to keep the mortar functioning longer so that we don't have to go through the whole thing again soon.
Yes, but in perpetuity, you will have that cost associated with every, 30 years, 35 years, 40 years to address some of those issues.
It seems to be unavoidable, but my attitude is, since I've lived in the neighborhood, the school taxes have gone up a lot more than $100 a year without any increase in the value of our property. And I think if we are getting used to those increases in school taxes, most of us will be able to adjust to paying $100 or $200 whenever we need to maintain the properties.
Yes.
So, addressing the mortar, okay? I don't think that the people doing the work are totally responsible for the mortar. I think that they are responsible for the workmanship, but it's like roofing. there's a, because I'm in real estate, there's an area in Henrietta where all the roofs were coming apart in 11 years. And I called the builder directly, and he said, we found out that the shingles had more sand in it, a proportionate more sand than it did asphalt. It's the same thing with the doing the pavement and stuff like that. It's the quality of the materials that they're using, and it's, you know, I just want to make sure you can't blame the workmen for the mortar, you know, but I don't know how you clear it that it's good mortar. You know, it's like baking. You got good flour, you don't know.
Yeah,
you know?
you can address some of that through the technical specifications.
Robert Hill, 74 Westland Avenue. I suggest we go back to the historical formula in the Colosseum in Rome.
Oh.
It's a lime-based mortar. Water self-heals cracks. It lasts over 2,000 years. Well, okay, so water causes cracks when it freezes. When you have lime in the mortar, it heals those cracks. And it's not just the Rome. I'm making a little bit of a joke. We can make mortar that does last. I mean, my chimney needs some repointing, but it's the birds that are picking out the mortar. Yeah.
I think everyone several people made a really good point about there's been some excellent craftsmanship done in our neighborhood on your own homes. And I know that they still will have to be vetted, but there's no, I mean, tell me if I'm saying something wrong, but why can't we say if someone's used a contractor, a concrete, a mason who has a lot of experience with stone, why can't we say to them, you know what, we heard that there's going to be a project, reach out to the town, right? You're not allowed to? Oh, I remember, and a name that you know.
So
yeah. I mean, I literally had my entire front step, and Gabriel watched it being done. My entire front step, taken apart piece by piece by piece by the masons who we worked with, and I thought they were amazing. So I mean, I'm sure other people have had work done like that and been happy.
So we would publicly advertise the work, and any contractor that's, you know, reputable can submit a bid. Brendan, I don't know if you've gotten any questions via Zoom.
No, one person raised his hand, but has not.
Okay. Again, if you're on Zoom and you want to participate or have questions, feel free to type them in the chat, and we'll read them off here and do our best to answer them. Flexible what? Oh, yes. The rigidity of what was used is causing some of that cracking.
All right, we do have a question. Can you clarify, is the 5-year plan covering the same scope of work as the 10-year plan, particularly with respect to the annual maintenance and inspection?
Yes, and just to clarify, yes, the same scope of work on both scenarios. To clarify, the annual maintenance work will go on in perpetuity. So $1,200 annually, $6,400 every 5 years is the recommended approach.
Oh, I'll give it to you. That's all right. You were first. It's okay. You've been waiting.
I just had a quick question. I like the idea of the gardening being included. That'll make the job a lot easier for the board. Does this give you enough time to do what you have to do to get you have to go around and get approvals from all the neighbors, a certain percentage? Would you need more time than it would take for the date that the wall is going to be repaired?
Yeah, that would be a completely different process. So the timelines probably would not coincide.
So if we don't get enough approvals right away, that will not hold up the repairs for the wall?
No, yeah, initially I didn't even want to bring up the landscaping, but yes, it's a completely different process, unrelated really to the work.
I thought you were going to include that in the cost budget.
That is the hope, I think, long-term, to make sure we include landscaping in the district annual fees. But right now, it's not even, it'll be a
All
very
right,
long
so it's
process.
a separate, it's not going to be, okay.
Correct.
So right now, what you're talking about is like a pipe dream of ours, which is to include the maintenance of the walls, upkeep for years to come, without anybody worrying about it, that as part of the improvement district. And then also upkeep of the gardens, maintenance. So, but what Everett told us before was that that wasn't able to be included in the first improvement district series that went through, so that piece was missing, and the scope of that type of addition is not a bit of an amendment. That is a whole new process, which takes how
So
long?
it's district formation process, so, I don't know, 6 months to a year, depending, yeah.
Boo. Okay, my question is, I think that maybe lots of people are super interested in a bit of extra reading, and there isn't enough to go around.
yeah.
So is it possible to have that? I don't think you have to scan it individually. Okay, do what you will.
I can send
you.
you a
That's
digital
wonderful.
copy of
Yeah,
it, and you
we'll
can.
send it out.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Okay.
I just wanted to note, there was a follow-up. So the difference between 5 and 10 year is how long it takes for us to pay for the upfront repair costs, and yes, that's correct.
Yeah, and also the impact to the town's budget on an annual repayment for the district. So that annual repayment does play into the tax cap calculation, so there is that impact as well.
Hi, I have,
Yeah. Okay, just real quick, I guess, every year that the town is bound by the tax cap and basically determines, and Bill, feel free to jump in because I'm gonna butcher this, but how much taxes can be increased and levied, and district charges count against that tax cap calculation. So the larger that number or that district charge is, the more it counts against that tax levy or that tax cap calculation.
so I understand now that the landscaping portion would be considered separately, but it is unclear to me, reading over the report, like, for example, we did have a hedge that predated us that we thought was maybe intruding onto we did have it removed recently, but we planted some new little bushes. Would we be required to get rid of those in terms of the maintenance, even without the landscaping, or if the landscaping option went through? That's a question we would have.
The maintenance portion really is intended to ensure, from a structural standpoint, that the walls aren't being impacted. So if there's vines growing in between the railings and the caps, et cetera, or some planting that's impacting the foundation or holding water, those would be what would be recommended to remove. But if it's not, then no. I mean, and at this point, there is no landscaping component to it.
Thank you.
It's because you list the removal of 2 trees on the Highlands and Entry, and that would have to be probably on the property of the Grabowskis who took over the house on the Jones. And the question is, why do you want those trees removed? Are there no trees allowed in front of that wall, or you just think they're old and decrepit and need to go?
There's a little of that, and also root intrusion. So if there are larger trees that are impacting that foundation or system, yep.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. So if you folks have questions that you didn't think of right now, or maybe you think about later, our contact information is there. Feel free to call me or email me, or poor Brendan, call him and email him. But certainly I will share that report with you, Liz, and we can go from there.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
How long would the work take? Like, once we have a process,
Yeah.
once we say, oh, we want to go 5 or 10 years or 7.5
Yeah.
years,
Yeah.
and then you would put out the contract for bid,
bid docs, yeah.
And then you choose someone,
Yep.
and then the work could potentially start,
Summer of '24, maybe fall of '24, really.
and
Yeah.
the length of that, of the scope of that project is.
I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I'll confirm on that and email you. Yeah. All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, have a good night.